Christina is an assistant professor at the Department of Economics at the University of Copenhagen, has done lots of incredible work, actually on a question of using environmental policy instruments, which I'm very familiar with. And also, I loved your paper on how annoying reminders can be, because I really related to it. So, so the floor is yours.
Great, thanks so much for having me. It has been also really cool listening into the conversations. Unfortunately, I missed yesterday, but I tried to catch the most of today. So let me share my screen so we can get started. Go and all right, does this work? Great. Yep. All right. So yes, so I've done some work on using nudges as environmental policy instruments. I just put one project also in the chat where we actually compare economic incentives to nudges for public transport usage in order to see. And there we actually find that incentives work and they change behavior also 8 months after removing incentives, but the nudges actually had no effect. But now I'm actually going to talk about something different, and that is the topic of food waste. And I think in a way, it also refers back to what Christian said earlier about do we sometimes look at the easier questions to answer or something just because maybe the data is there and it's easier to do than some of the other topics. And I think food waste is maybe one of these topics where behavioral data is quite hard to come by. So that was also something what we wanted to look at in this case and see how can we extend to that. This is a project in collaboration with a consulting company, Ramböll, and was funded by the Swedish Food Agency. So probably I don't need to motivate this in the group here, but around a third of the produced food is never consumed. And in Europe, around 50% of food waste is estimated to come from households. But as an economist, we ask ourselves the question, is this really a mistake or a market failure that requires policy intervention? And hear me out, because as an economist might argue and say, well, maybe creating food waste is optimal given consumer preferences. So people, and there is definitely some survey evidence that is in line with this, saying that, well, people might want to feel like they're a good provider and they're worried of running out. So if you have guests, you want to have enough food at home. Caretakers might want to encourage themselves or their children to eat healthier, right? There's a lot of nudges about eating more fruits and vegetables. So they might deliberately buy these fruits and vegetables in the stores, because if you don't have them at home, you're also not going to eat them. Households might want to be perceived as affluent by others by providing a lot of food in particular communities. People have a preference for having a variety at home. You don't want to decide at the beginning of the week what you want to eat every single night. And also stockpiling can reduce stress and save time. So I think these are all what we would consider rational reasons that would result in some food waste in the end. So I'm not saying it's not without externalities, but it is maybe some explanation why we might also see this behavior in a deliberate way. However, we also know from existing survey evidence that at least some people feel guilty when they throw away food, and that many people state that they have the intention to reduce their food waste. So I think this gives us some evidence that this is not just a deliberate choice of individuals, but it is somehow also a negative consequence of behavior. And then, of course, not wasting money is also often mentioned as a concern. So what seems to be happening is that at least a share of consumers might be not be intentionally overbuying, but unintentionally be buying too much. So here we now have a mistake, and then that's also a reason where policy might want to come in so that we can help people reduce this mistake. From a theoretical perspective, there's a lot of theory within economics that looks at limited attention, and that potentially firms also have the opportunity to exploit this inattention for profit. So if this research often focuses on things like health insurance plans or maybe car purchases or taxes, so complicated situations where individuals have a challenge of really understanding the situation, and that's why they buy the wrong thing. There's several nice papers in this regard that I'm not going to go all into, but here in these situations, it's really about the choice being very difficult to make, and that's why people make mistakes. Then there's also some research on how we actually perceive choices. So this idea of getting external stimuli and then that guiding our choices. And so a lot of also recent research in economics trying to understand what the connection is between that. So is it really kind of a top-down approach where we think about, okay, this is what we want to buy and this is how we want to consume, and then we choose something and maybe we not pay as much attention to it because it's not worth our time, or is it something that's very reactive when we are in the store? So if we are very reactive to this external stimuli, then this could be strategically manipulated by firms and then thus make us as decision makers worse off. So in this particular case, get us to buy more than we actually intended. So the question that we're then trying to ask in the study here is overbuying, which then results in household food waste, the consequence of a rational decision-making process? So is this actually what people want and just happens to lead to food waste? Or is there potentially that supermarkets exploit this consumer inattention and people unintentionally buy more than they want? Because this is, of course, also very important for policy questions and for information, right? Because if we say, well, we keep informing people and they might know that they're creating food waste by their habits, but if they're not consciously connecting this or buying more than they had intended, then also information isn't going to be very helpful at this point. So what we do is that we conduct a randomized controlled trial, a field experiment, a natural field experiment. So without people knowing that they're part of an experiment, in which products have easy to understand features, and this decision is frequently repeated, and then consumers can also learn whether they consume the product or not, in order to see how do people, are they going to react to different types of stimuli in the store. So briefly, let's talk about the experimental design. We contacted almost 100 stores, but in the end, we managed to get 8 stores to participate to do this experiment with us. And 2 of these stores actually participate with 2 different products. So in total, we have 10 individual experiments. So we told these, so we recruited these stores for saying, okay, we want to run an experiment on multi-price or quantity offers, so these multi-buy offers, and we wanted to see how can we then affect decision-making in the store. We randomly assigned 2 treatments to each of the stores for 2 weeks, alternating the treatments and randomizing these treatments across the stores. So what were we looking at here? So from a policy perspective, these supermarkets were also very interested in the question of, do quantity offers lead to more food waste, or are quantity offers just beneficial for individuals because they help them save money and is attractive for the stores? So what we're comparing is offers such as 2 for X, so you can say 2 for £2, something like this, right? 2 cucumbers for £2 offer. And then we're comparing it to a 1 for £1 offer, a 2 for £2 offer, and increasing the reference price. So how much are you actually saving when you choose this offer or when you buy 2? And then a 2 for £2 plus a nudge. And I'll show you the nudge on the next page. But the idea with all of these 3 interventions was to get people to, in a way, stop in their tracks and to think about how much they actually want and need to buy, and then to see whether that would have an effect on how much they buy. Right, from a basic economics perspective, the prices were kept the same in all 4 conditions. So since there's no difference in prices, there's no difference in the products presented, in their quality, in the timing. So in the average consumer that's entering the store, we should expect that we're going to see no results across these treatments. We then have 2 different types of outcome variables. The first one is we're evaluating the difference in sales. This is our main outcome variable. And then secondly, we also offered, or we added little stickers to all the products with QR codes and told people that there was a 2-minute survey they could answer. We did not say it was about food waste. We just said it's a consumer survey, and you can get pretty much $10 for answering a 2-minute survey if they filled out this QR code. No, I don't have the sticker. Yeah, so there was a little sticker on that. What happened when they scanned this QR code is we registered their email address, and then 1 week later we sent them a survey asking them if they had actually consumed the products that they had bought. because the survey is now also randomized across stores and within the treatments, we can then say what was the effect of the treatment on the consumption behavior. How, additionally, the design, you can see here on the little red dots, these are the 8 supermarkets we collaborate with across Sweden. As I said, we contacted already around 80 supermarkets, so 10% success rate in getting them involved in the experiment. But as you can see, it's across the country, and also in Sweden, the highest density of population is in the lower part of Sweden. So the highest dot there is in Stockholm, and most of the population lives below that. We have 4 big supermarkets, which are outside of city, and 4 smaller supermarkets inside of the city. And we stratified by supermarket size to have a more robust regression. How did we select the products? Well, here we looked at the existing literature. We found that most of food waste comes from bread, dairy, fresh fruit and vegetables, but we had particular constraints. So we needed products that expire very quickly, have high sales volume, so we would get enough data, are regularly sold at a regular price discount and multi-buy, so that it would be natural that this would be on sale, which have a stable price over 2 weeks, so the price wouldn't vary and that wouldn't change our results. That there's no close substitutes, right? This would be a problem with bread because there's so many different breads people could buy, so they could just switch to a different product. And that were sold in single packaging, not by kilogram, so we could attach the sticker and also count it quite easily. The perfect products for this were, first of all, cucumbers, and then 2 stores also broccoli. And if you ever tried freezing a cucumber, because that's often an argument, that does not work, right? So this is definitely nothing that you can just freeze it and consume at a later point. If you did not eat the cucumber until it goes bad, it goes to the trash. So we can be very sure of that. This is how it looked in the stores. So what we gave the supermarkets were these kinds of suggestions. And here, this is that little nudge, and it says, "I'll come home with you if you eat me." So kind of getting people to think about, okay, do I actually need to buy 2? And then we have the larger salience price here, and then the 1 for 15. But in order to make it really as real as possible, we told the supermarkets, this is what you're supposed to implement, but you implement it in a way that fits with your store. So we had 7 stores from one chain, another store from another chain, but even within the chains, they have slightly, you see here is a bit of a yellow behind and a little bit of different signs, but it was important to us that this was very realistic and that we could actually test the mechanisms and not, is there a yellow sun or is there no yellow sun behind it? Because this also then, well, it stayed the same then across conditions, but was in the same supermarket. So I think here we have a high realism, and you can see here, you don't really see it, but you see small stickers on here. So from afar, and then they also were turned to the side. So we tried to really make sure that people wouldn't be drawn attention that this was in any way an experiment. So it was just some small stickers. Each of the stores received 2 treatments, so we were able also to look for fixed effects or take out fixed effects within stores. And then it would start with 1 treatment, have the other treatment, and come back. So we'll be able to take out any trend effects. And then we have the survey running from the earliest 1 week after the first sales day. Here I have the coupon now. So this, I think I'm mostly already set. And you can see here, right, on the cucumbers, this is where these stickers were on. And the survey was really kept very short. Mostly we were just interested, how many cucumbers did you buy? And did you eat the cucumbers, yes or no? And then a very few demographic questions, but really to keep the amount of questions as limited as possible, so to get more answers. So coming to the results, we have over 40,000 products bought during the experiment over the different stores. So here we really have a large sample size. But still we're going to pool cucumbers and broccolis for power. There's not really any differences in sales here. We also have some weekly sales data from before the experiment and after the experiment, so that we can look at just like volumes in general and take that out. And we also have ecological substitutes of the product, so we could see if people, right, if they did not want to buy the regular cucumber, did they buy the organic one. For the survey, we stuck 21,000 stickers on cucumbers, so quite a lot, on average 150 per day product in supermarket, and we got a 1% response rate, something not very surprising, I think, with these types of marketing samples, but obviously here we're much more limited in power. So I take this more as a suggestive evidence for our main results that we find with the store data. What we can see from the store data is that all three treatments significantly reduce the amount of products bought. So here we're also controlling, there were some small price differences across the stores, and that's what I'm controlling for here. But kind of the main results are the blue bars. So it's approximately 17% less, and then around 11% less and 9% less. So here the comparison price in the salience treatment, the nudge was about 11% less, and this single discount was about 17% less. So our hypothesis is that if everybody was perfectly rational purchasing just as much as they wanted, we should have found no effect. Clearly here, highly significant. We find that all three treatments strongly reduce sales. Interesting enough, this was not something we had really thought about beforehand, but the salience treatments of making the comparison price really large, so how much are you actually saving, that had a significant positive effect on ecological substitutes. So it seemed that once you really thought about it, actually you don't save that much by buying two. Some people actually just transition to buying the more expensive organic product instead. In the survey data, we see that it's fairly well distributed. So it's not that a particular treatment led to more survey responses, but of course, with these numbers, we're going to have some variation. But we also see that about a third of people, bought one cucumber and or broccoli, and then 2/3 bought more than that. And then what we find here is that, this is actually on the left side is historic data. Given the lower power that we have, here these results are just only marginally significant for the single one. But how to interpret this is that, oh, no, sorry, this is actually how much they actually bought. Yes, but still we see the same effects. And I think what's very nice here in this case, still marginally significant, but the nice thing is that actually this is minus 17%, what they say, how much they bought in the survey. And it's also minus 17% what we actually measured in the store data. And here for the salience treatment is quite similar. And then for the nudge, this is a bit unclear here in the survey. But this gives us a good idea that this is actually very representative people who self-selected into the survey, because when asked, we find the same treatment effects in how much they bought in the survey and in the store data. Now coming to the whether they ate it or not. So if they just bought one product, one cucumber, one broccoli, then they also ate it. So we don't find any food waste here. But we do find suggestive evidence that if they bought two products in the single condition, so in the 1 for 1 pound, if you bought two individually, you were more likely to eat it than in the 2 for 2 pounds condition. So turning this around, this would mean that this quantity offer did increase food, or there's suggestive evidence that this increased food waste on the household level. There's no effect on the salience and nudge treatment here on consumption. As you can see, the standard errors are very large. I mean, goes in the right direction, but very large standard errors. We have a couple of other questions we asked them. Not unsurprisingly, if you had a larger household, you were more likely to buy more products. So that's maybe not surprising. I think the only thing that's really interesting here is that those people who said that they are aware that they often buy too much and throw it out, also here stated that they had not actually eaten the product. So eaten would be going this way. So they were less likely to have consumed it. So I think this is good evidence that shows that even though people are conscious that this is something that they often do, they still do it also in this case. So again, information itself is unlikely to be enough here.
Just a quick wrap up for questions.
Yes, exactly. So I think, this one we can skip. So here we just have the conclusion. So what we find is that consumers who are randomly exposed to a simple discount and nudge or a more salient comparison price who bought significantly fewer products than those exposed to the regular quantity discount. It's quite clear here that this is not a too difficult decision for people to make compared to maybe some of the other studies we find in economics would be an explanation of why people have trouble with this. And we have some suggestive evidence that the quantity discount also increases the food waste. I think our experiment is particularly nice because it has this very high external validity. It's people were not aware they were part of an experiment. It's set in a regular supermarket. There's no self-selection into the experiment itself. So I do think it provides a valuable complement to the more survey-based literature that at the moment is most prevalent in this field. All right.
Fantastic.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so great to see a field study. And maybe I had a question on that actually, which was, we have a lot of students also attending the conference, and as we've seen, there are so many strengths of the lab, but there are so many strengths of the field. So in this particular case, it was really interesting because there seems to be a trade-off between the profits a supermarket can make and actually interventions to reduce food waste in terms of the sales data. So I wanted your thoughts in terms of what's the buy-in for supermarkets to do this, and also when you're trying to approach supermarkets from a very practical research perspective, do you have any tips as to how students and researchers can actually build these connections, and especially when they're very context of these interests potentially, right?
Yeah. So two answers. So right now I have 2 master students who are running a supermarket study here in Denmark. So this was done in Sweden, and they contacted them. In a way, they're doing something easier because it's about healthy eating, and usually supermarkets are a bit more into that than decreasing profits. So yes, this was particularly difficult. It was good to have the food agency in the background, but I do honestly want to say that I was very disappointed by the headquarters of the different chains who claim to be very environmentally conscious and they care about food waste, but to them it's a lot about, we need to educate people and they need to change behavior. It's not our problem. If they buy 5 broccolis, then they need to learn new recipes so that they can eat 5 broccolis a week. So that's not our problem, and we want to make it cheap for people and things. So I think that was honestly a bad experience on the management level. But at least the stores we worked with, these are kind of franchise stores in Sweden, so they're independently owned, even though they belong to one chain. And so what we did, we called these 80 stores and talked to them, and then we did found that they were quite motivated personally to contribute to this research, and also some of them did believe. And I think the one we worked with most, he actually said, this is mostly about perishable items. So nobody's saying that you shouldn't sell toilet paper at 2 for 1, right? If you want to do that, if people will react to that, that's fine. But the question is, do we need to do that on these items that expire within a week? Because he felt that he wants to have a good relationship with his customers. And if they week by week throw things in the trash that they bought in the store, that also is giving this negative feeling with purchasing. And maybe if they buy less one day, they might actually come in more times, and then they buy also other things. So even though we haven't evaluated this here, he felt that it was not obvious that on these highly perishable items, this would be a problem to implement.
That's super interesting. I had a similar conversation with people at Waitrose, and they were also obsessed with the waste around cucumbers. And I feel like you could even think about other products like plastic packaging for cucumbers, for instance, was a big concern with them. So you could imagine that there are very many ways you could take that forward. Andres, you have a question there.
Just a follow-up comment. I'm from Riga, and I just ran a field experiment in supermarket chain, trying to reduce the use of plastic bags by the fruit department, and it is really hard to in my experience, it's just hard to explain what a field experiment really is, as you really need to start with very basic things to explain them what it means to randomly assign a store to something. So I clearly share the same thoughts with Christina, that it's really hard to and another thing is that they are really afraid of competence of other chains coming into that. You gather data from different competitors, so basically it's very hard to convince them to cooperate in the field. Supermarkets are very afraid of anything sharing with anyone. And great presentation, Christina. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Yes. So I think one maybe tip here, since you asked it before. So we got one supermarket on board and he was very into it. And then we did a pilot with him and like tried to figure out all the kinks. And then we went around with the other ones and actually had these little checklists and we said, it's going to take this much time. This is what you're going to do. You're either going to get this or this sign and you're going to put it up like this. So I think there it made it, because I think I totally agree with Andres. It's sometimes hard for them to also understand how much effort this is going to be and what am I supposed to do here. And then we had this very, very detailed kind of checklist thing. And we heard from some, which was fun, they have these people who are supposed to be integrated back into the labor market who only work for short hours. And they actually then made them their project also to put the stickers on and something. So in that way, I think they said overall, it took them about 10 minutes in the morning or something to put on these stickers. And then with the signs and sending out the data, it was a bit more than 2 hours, not for the original supermarket who helped us a lot with piloting, but then for the other 7 we just kind of delivered the kit and then told them exactly what they were supposed to do.
Now, that's super interesting. Also, I guess there's something else you said before, which is interesting, which is when they perceive that it can have a backfire effect amongst consumers. And you mentioned actually a well-being channel, which is people feel bad that they're wasting food. That seems to be potentially a way to get people on board. And I was wondering, in your research, is it possible to estimate the welfare effects of food waste, or have you tried to do that on people?
Yeah, so I think here so I would argue kind of that it's negative welfare, they have to throw it out. So, but of course, I mean, the survey day. So yeah, I presented this to policymakers and we're like, yeah, it would have been great if you had done this on 100 stores and with 2,000 survey responses. And I was like, yeah, I totally agree. That would have been fantastic. But if anybody knows those stores who are willing to do it, we're happy to. I mean, this is a policy report at the moment. It's published. Anybody wants to replicate it, go ahead if you have enough stores. So yeah, I think at this point, so I am thinking about looking a bit more into the mechanisms, maybe with some also lab studies to complement it. I'm discussing with a US researcher right now who works a lot on salience questions. But I think at this point, it's probably, yeah, I think the data on surveys can be too small to really do some proper estimations of welfare. But otherwise, as you know from my other papers, I do think that's very important. I just think here it's, not enough data at this point.
Yeah, no, I think and I think this is one of the challenges which links back to Christian's comments on impact. So in the context of food waste, it's notoriously hard to measure actually weight or even the quality of food waste. So this is something where I think a partner is very helpful to actually do that.
I don't know if it's not, but I do think, I mean, here really what we want to show is that people are not fully rational when shopping. So I think that's really the strongest takeaway we should have here, that people are not going to the store and buying as much as they want, but that they're strongly influenced by how these discounts are presented and then buying at other levels, even though prices and everything and the choices are the same, the prices are the same, but depending on how it's presented, they buy different things. So I think there it's more of a comment of having to say, okay, we are influenced by this. So just educating people about food waste or knowing that you have food waste might not be enough if people are inattentive in the stores. And that's maybe where I think there were some earlier questions also on, okay, what can we actually do, low-hanging fruits, or how, can we get people to change behavior? Here, I do think it would be in their best interest just to be aware of the prices or how much they want. So I think there it's not like you have to suddenly eat some I don't know, mushroom burger you don't want to eat. It's just that, well, you shouldn't buy something that you're probably going to throw away.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's a really important thing